something wasn't mentioned that you had in mind, find out if it can be covered at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE, because it probably can be.
As you might have heard by now, the British are coming.
It's hard to accept.
Oh, but we have to. Downton Abbey, the grand finale, hit a chord with audiences over the weekend.
That's what Downton's always been, isn't it? It's moments.
Miss Anna Bates, Joanne Froggatt gave me a little insight as to why the franchise has worked for so long.
Those human stories are universal.
Right.
And they transcend time and location. And I think they always will.
Sure you don't want to try it?
I can't.
I won't tell if you won't.
And the chaos in Maplebrook, Texas shall continue. Netflix's bonkers crazy hit The Hunting Wives, with Brittany Snow and Malin Ackerman officially getting the go-ahead for Season 2. For CBS Entertainment, I'm Matt Wolf.
Brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Progressive can help you protect your home, auto, boat, motorcycle, ATV, and RV, and more. And if something wasn't mentioned that you had in mind, find out if it can be covered at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE, because it probably can be.
For 75 years, Murfreesboro Medical Clinic has been a cornerstone of health and compassion in our community. From our humble beginnings to the advanced, comprehensive care we offer today, our commitment to you has never wavered. With 8 locations across Murfreesboro and Middle Tennessee and over 100 physicians, we continue to provide the highest standard of care. Then, now, and always, your health is our mission.
FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro. FM 100.5 Smyrna. Audio and video streaming at wgnsradio.com. This is the Roundtable. A look at the news, views, politics, and people that are shaping Rutherford County.
Welcome into the Roundtable, WGNS. I'm Andy Herzer, here with Peter Demas. He really needs no introduction. The Demas family has been entrenched in Rutherford County and the Middle Tennessee for a long time. And Peter, welcome in.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and you invited me to be on the show.
Well, it's kind of a little intimidating because you do your own podcast. You've interviewed some unbelievable people. If we can, we're going to go there first because I think it's interesting. It's also relevant because you've interviewed Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of the guys and women that you've interviewed and what you've taken away from it.
You know, it started out as kind of accidental, and then and it's just kind of has progressed and grown. But I've interviewed people like Charlie Kirk, which was amazing when he came out with his last book that he came out with. I've interviewed Mayor Giuliani. But, you know, I try to now, I'm really trying to get other people that have differing viewpoints. Like I've interviewed Stephen Law, who's an Oxford philosopher, atheist. He debates Christians. I got very nervous. We were wrapping up the interview, and when he said, well, I got some questions for you, and then I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And so, but it ended up being just a good conversation. I've interviewed other humanists, but I've interviewed apologists like Frank Turek, and just so just different people with different things. And my idea behind it is I want to challenge everybody's thought process, regardless of whether I agree with them or not, so that we can engage in a conversation so other people can see what a real conversation is supposed to look like, especially if you disagree with them.
So when you're in there, has it ever, because we're in a society that if you disagree, we scream at each other, which right. I have to turn off TVs and I have to turn off the social media stuff. Has it ever gotten into a heated debate with any of them?
No. Well, I take that back. There was one guy, and it wasn't heated at all. It was he was kind of early on when I was interviewing people, and I would 100% call him a false prophet. He said he could predict the gold and silver and crypto markets using the book of Daniel and Revelation. And what really bothered me was that he was going on all these Christian podcasts, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's the best thing ever," they were really promoting him in such a way. And so I did my research that I do and read up on him. And so when I started challenging him on his the biblical thinking and what he was interpreting the Bible to mean and say, he got very defensive. And so, but it was never heated. But even at the end, I'm like, I even said, it's very clear that we disagree with each other. It's very clear that we don't, but at the same time, we could still have this conversation. And because I think even in arguments, even in disagreements, even if emotions kind of get there, as long as we're still listening to the other person, it doesn't really matter. Because again, if you have two different viewpoints, other people out there should be able to discern truth from reality, especially if they're being honest with themselves.
Well, there's the first thing.
Yeah.
Is being honest with yourself. Right. So, again, Peter, when you're looking at and doing these interviews, how quick is it for you? I found you to be one of the deep thinkers in our leadership Rutherford class, and again, we were talking off air that leadership Rutherford really was good for us, for you, and for myself, and how. Then quickly can you discern when the person's disingenuous and not telling the truth?
I don't know. I don't. It's kind of interesting because I think that is something that I've had growing up in a family business, and being around it. As a kid, you learn really quickly when people were really kind to you to your face. Or kind to you when your parents were around, and then when my parents weren't around, they weren't kind anymore. Or, and you could see things differently that when you're not the boss, but you can kind of see and pick up the fakeness of people. And then the other advantage I had, and a lot of people will be surprised at this, that I call it an advantage, but for most of my middle school and high school life, I was bullied really badly. And so you also got to watch and see kind of, okay, what's about to happen. You studied people, and it was kind of as a self-protection. So I think in that sense, I have learned a behavior. I don't know if I have natural skills at discernment or not, or spiritual gifts on it, but I do know that there's definitely some learned behavior on it. But a lot of times I can't necessarily figure it out. Like, you have the hair on the back of your neck go up, but you're not 100% certain why. And you just kind of keep pulling at that thread to kind of see what happens and just hope that you can pull at that thread before the time runs out.
So your life experience young, being bullied, what did you gain an advantage with being? Because second grade, and I know a lot of people find this hard to believe. I stuttered. I couldn't read. I was that kid. I took 100 different ways home so this one kid wouldn't beat me up every day.
Right.
I became aware that not everybody was going to like Andy Herzer. So what did you gain from that?
I think there's several things. I think standing up for what is right was a huge piece of it. Standing up for people that I think I developed a sense of justice that pushes me in a lot of different ways. I agree with you. Learning that not everyone's going to like me, and I'm okay with the fact that not everyone's going to like me. I want people to like me. I think that's a better. When people are nice to me, I enjoy that more than when people aren't nice to me. And that's very helpful now. When people, say bad things about the restaurant online, or they, do that stuff, I don't even bother reading that stuff because, again, it doesn't matter to me. If you can't have a conversation with me face to face. But the other thing too is I recognized quickly that after a while I wasn't going to take it anymore, and I remember the critical moment. I knew it was about to happen. I was trying to run to the bus, and I had my big backpack on and running as hard as I could to get to the bus, because I knew when I got to the bus, on the bus, I'd be okay. And I made it about halfway before they caught me, and you're running so hard, and they just pushed me from behind. And, when that happens, you go sprawling down, and there was this big stick that I fell right next to, and I picked the stick up, and I hit him across the head with it. I got in a lot of trouble for that. But what I realized that day was I may go down losing, but I will always go down fighting. And at that point in time is when I realized that I'm going to start standing up for myself. And I learned that valuable lesson then, which is I'm going to stand up for myself. And then as I matured and then as I found Christ, I realized there's better ways to stand up for myself without punching somebody, without belittling somebody, and so engaging in that was a maturing process. But the core is still there.
So you briefly mentioned how it's helped you in the restaurant business. Nobody is 100% ever satisfied in our, and it's what I've learned. I mean, I have, I've now been 23 years, you asked, doing First Shot. Not everybody's happy going through what I do. They leave. They'll say bad things about us. But at the end of the day, they're not my measuring stick, Peter. You and I have a new measuring stick.
Right.
And that is what's God asking us to do as Christ followers.
I think, and you're absolutely correct. I think Frank Turek, and I think he stole it from somebody else. I know he did, but I can't remember who, so I'll give him credit for it. But, he says when you watch Christians perform badly, that's a problem. He says if you listen to somebody play Beethoven badly, you don't blame Beethoven, you blame the person playing it badly. And you're right. So when I see people act the fool, when I see people act terrible, I realize that I'm not measuring things up with them. And all my job is to be obedient and to please Christ the best that I can. Now I fail every day. If I didn't, there would be no need to have Christ, and I wouldn't have to try. So, but I fail every day at it. But at the same time, that's what I strive to do. And when I mess up and when I allow myself to get involved, that's usually when I mess up the most. But no, so people can say all sorts of mean, terrible things to me and about me, and that's okay. I have, people tell me all the time I'm a fake Christian, and, because, I fired somebody or whatever it is. And I'm like,
So we can't, that's the thing that gets me. We can't hold people accountable. If we're Christians, that makes no sense to me.
No, I mean, Christ himself holds people accountable, but I mean, we even see it in all different parts of throughout the Bible. I mean, Paul, got rid of Mark. He and Barnabas had a split over Mark because he didn't like what Mark did, that Mark abandoned him on the previous trip. And even though Paul and Mark ended up reconciling and they were fine with it at the end, Paul said, no, I can't have him here, and I'm letting him go. And I think, and again, I think it's just part of what it is. I want to be held accountable. I read every comment card that comes in. I read every comment that's constructive to see, do we have issues? Do we have problems? But I don't let it get to me emotionally. I don't let it get to me of saying, oh my goodness, I'm a failure because I can't do everything correctly. I don't know how people can do that with themselves when they do it that way.
I always find this to be true. In 5th grade, my piano teacher came to my parents and told them, don't waste any more money.
I wish mine did.
Right? Don't waste any more money. He has no talent. And I heard that. Right? And people will go, didn't that hurt you? Well, I was being bullied, and that was just one other.
Right.
Right? But man, I put all that time that I was doing the piano into playing basketball. So she actually gave me the gift that I needed to go become a better basketball player, spend more time doing it. So I think sometimes when we let people go, we're really benefiting them so they can go find their place, their purpose.
Well, there's definitely some of that. But the other piece, so not only are we there is that possibility, but sometimes people are doing it because they're making really bad decisions in their life that are impacting them. If they are doing drugs that prevent them from showing up to work, or they're getting drunk every bunch the night before and can't come in, and or they're sluggish. Sometimes letting them go not only can benefit them because they might recognize that's the issue, but sometimes, and I think in many cases, letting people go benefits the other people of the team. And so, and you know this from coaching, you have a bad person on the team that may even have skills, but they can destroy a team, and they can destroy the how well a team works. And sometimes letting go of that bad person can bring out the success in others. And I think we have to look at that as well. It's not as just as simple as in this one particular situation. Doing it is never easy, though.
So I was in a group of five businessmen. They're very successful. I don't know how I was in there with them. I think a couple of the guys felt sorry for me, so they allowed me in. But that was their hardest thing they ever did, was right size. How do you let even really people that are good at what they're doing, sometimes you have to let them go for the health of the business. And is that the same in the restaurant business?
100%. I've probably terminated hundreds of people throughout my career. I actually teach lawyers and HR professionals how to do it, because what I find is that most people, because they're so uncomfortable doing it, they make it harder and they make it worse on the other person. As opposed to, I'm wanting to, we need to part ways. Here's the reason why. And I learned it from my dad. I'd watch him terminate people, and he'd be done in 45 seconds. And the very first time, I almost got in a fist fight with the person because they were so angry. And I realized, wait a second, I can never do it this way ever again. I want to follow his path. And but no, it's not easy. But I don't want to give them false hope. I don't want to give them an opportunity to think they can argue out of it. I don't want them to any of that. And have I messed up? Yeah, probably. But you know what? I've also messed up by keeping people around where I should have fired them much sooner than I did.
So in the restaurant business, what are the takeaways that you've learned from your mom and dad in it? And we all. I don't do everything like my mom and dad. I've changed some things, but there's a lot of them in me. So
right.
What have you kept, and what did you want to change?
It's my father taught me how to run a business. My mother taught me how to run a shift in a dining room. And she didn't know what she didn't know. She didn't grow up in the restaurant business. She was never around it. She was a bookkeeper for my father. The dining room manager quit unceremoniously they walked in one day and the keys were on the desk. And she said to my father, "What are we going to do?" And he said, "Well, you're going to be my dining room manager." And she said, "Well, I know nothing about running a dining room or running servers." She goes, "But I know how to raise kids, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to train them I'm going to raise them the way I raise my kids." And so when you have a policy, when you have a rule, you follow it. It's not one of those situations so you don't have many rules, but with the rules you have, you follow. And you enforce, and you let them know on the front end. And if they do it right, you praise them. If they do it wrong, you correct them. And she was very gifted and skilled at that. And she had the ability to just kind of boil it down to say, okay, what's the simplest thing that's going to get the best result for the customer? But she would sit down and talk with the servers. Matter of fact, my wife was actually, she was about to leave and go back home to Knoxville, where she's from, and my mother said, "Look, your problems are going to face you everywhere you go." And she convinced her to stay. A couple weeks later, I met her. 3 months later, we were engaged, and less than a year after that, we were married. And so, I mean, but my mother had this, but because she would do that with the staff and she would treat them that way, it had a huge impact. Now, trying to create a system from that is difficult. I can do it, but trying to create it for other people sometimes can be hard. My father, on the other hand, he, what we kind of learned from him was the value of systems, the value of the how things flow, to make it the most efficient as possible. He's the one that taught me things like how to read a financial statement without kind of going through a master's program, and I do it completely differently than everybody else. I just kind of look at it and kind of know. He taught me things like walk through the parking lot and look at the tags on the car to see if they're coming from locally or they're coming far away. I mean, that's kind of what I did. I mean, he was a very much of a grassroots restaurant operator, and I learned a lot from him that way.
a chef would come into town to visit one of the other assistant. It was his uncle. And he always said, we're going to Demas's. They got the best steaks. Talk about what quality of food matters, or if it's more service. What have you found, or is it a combination of all of it?
Oh, it has to be a combination. I mean, if no one's going to a place that intentionally has bad food unless there's something else they can get. But frankly, the same ground beef that you get at Walmart and McDonald's, you can also get at the 5-star restaurants you get in Nashville. Now, there might be a different blend in it. They might have a different way, but the cow's a cow. And when they grind up what's inside that cow, then that's what happens. Now, again, there's different pieces of the steak, and there's different qualities that can be used. But for me, where the big issue is when it comes from the customer's experience is the service, because if I have to pick something, it's the experience, I should say, not even necessarily the service. If I have to pick between two places that are roughly the same, let's take a Mexican restaurant here in town. Yeah. I mean, I have my two favorite Mexican restaurants. The reason why is because I love the service, the service, the owners in one of them. It's not because I really necessarily think that these nachos are better than those nachos. I enjoy both, but because of kind of what I'm wanting to get. Whether it's this one's faster, this one's cheaper, this one seems to have a better if I'm on a diet, for options. So there's a lot of other factors involved besides just the food itself. If we wanted just an experience, a piece of bread and piece of cheese can fill my hunger, but we want the experience, and that's what we're trying to give, but we keep the value down so that everybody can experience it too, and that's a big piece of it that we do for the customers.
So anytime my granddaughter, who grew up here in Murfreesboro, got sick, my wife went and got your soup. Yeah. Why? I mean, it's kind of really, your soup and your bread have kind of separated you a little bit from others.
Right.
Would you...
Yes,
you're laughing.
I'm laughing because the soup was actually not. My father didn't like the soup at first. It was his grandmother. It came from his grandmother or his mother, maybe his grandmother. But it was my grandmother definitely, and it was a very strong Greek version of it. And he tried to Americanize it, and he was like, "No one is going to like it, but I need to have something to start." And so it became really popular, and he never took it off because it was so popular. And now we ship it all over the nation. So I laugh because he originally did not want to have that, and it was just kind of a last minute thing that I agree with you, and you're right. When it's sick, we call it Greek penicillin. When it's sick, it just makes you feel good. There's just something about it. I get a sore throat. I sip the broth, and it works.
Well, we're going to take a break and be right back with Peter Demas.
For 75 years, Murfreesboro Medical Clinic has been a cornerstone of health and compassion in our community. From our humble beginnings to the advanced, comprehensive care we offer today, our commitment to you has never wavered. With 8 locations across Murfreesboro and Middle Tennessee and over 100 physicians, we continue to provide the highest standard of care. Then, now, and always, your health is our mission.
What's the location of your emergency? I think my kid OD'd.
Hi, I'm Craig Harris. I'm County Commissioner of Rutherford County. One of the reasons I ran for office is because I wanted to bring awareness to the opioid epidemic that's impacting our county. To stop providing this epidemic with people as we educate. We have a lot to do, and we have to come together as a community because this problem's not going away.
This is Chip Walters, and I'm honored to be your 2024 MTAR Realtor of the Year. I'm with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates, and like many of you, I've seen the real estate market shift and change. People often ask, Chip, what's really going on? Well, that's a great question, and I believe in answering with solid factual data. So let's cut through some of the noise. I invite you to reach out. Let's have a conversation about your real estate goals and the current market trends in your neighborhood. You can find all my contact information at choosechip.net.
Good Neighbor Events is brought to you by America Pest Control, Old National Bank, and the law offices of John Day.
Friends? Yes. The financial partners whom you've built a relationship with at Old National Bank are still at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard location, right here in the borough. And so are the warm, homemade cookies.
Cookies are ready, dear.
Like Grandma used to make. If you need online and mobile banking, Murfreesboro's Old National Bank does that too. You and Old National Bank, better together.
Old National Bank at 2230 Dr. MLK Jr. Boulevard. Old National Bank, member FDIC.
This is Peter Demas, and our family is inviting your family to come eat with us at Demas's restaurant. When Kristen said, okay, when we're going to do the remodel, because we're celebrating 35 years, we also wanted to make it more open and inviting. So we made the lobby a lot more open. Booth seats, a little bit different colors to kind of still keep it a little up to date, make it fresh. We wanted to make it cozier, make it a little bit brighter for people to see, to pay homage to where we have been the entire time. Demas's restaurant on Northwest Broad Street.
Let's check those WGNS Good Neighbor events. Remembering the Guitar Man, Casey Clark, Saturday night at 6 at the Smith Fork Tabernacle on Halls Hill Pike. That's 6 o'clock this Saturday night. You need to be there. And Saturday brings the Greenway Arts Festival. It'll be at Cannonsburg this year because of construction at the old Fort Park. Again, the Greenway Arts Festival this Saturday at Cannonsburg Village in Murfreesboro. Oh yes, the annual Kittrell School reunion is this Saturday. You need to be there this Saturday from 10 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Meet some old friends, share memories, and reconnect. That's the annual Kittrell School reunion this Saturday from 10 until 2. And that's at Kittrell School, 7801 Old Woodbury Pike, this Saturday. The Red Cross is still critically low on blood. Please give the gift of life. Get with the Red Cross. Roots Rendezvous by Uncle Dave Macon Days is all this weekend at Hop Springs. Those are WGNS Good Neighbor events.
Rutherford weather.
Look for sunny to partly cloudy skies for this afternoon. We'll have highs in the lower 90s. For tonight, partly cloudy, mid-60s, and Tuesday up to 90. I'm meteorologist Michael Carroll from the WGNS Rutherford Weather Center. Currently at 67.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. Seriously looking at solar power generation? MTE offers a free consultation with an energy expert and has an entire library of educational resources. To learn more, visit mte.com/prosolar.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at wgnsradio.com.
Welcome back into WGNS and Roundtable. I'm Andy Herzer here with Peter Demas today. And Peter, first I'm going to thank you. I forgot to do that in the first segment. I don't even know why I reached out to you, but I'm glad I did because we've had some really good conversations off air. And I love people that are honest and transparent as you have been. Growing up in Murfreesboro and being a Demas was not easy, is what I've heard.
Well, I didn't grow up in Murfreesboro. I actually grew up in Middle Tennessee, and that was not easy. My parents came here. My parents came here with the Western Sizzlin franchise in the 70s. And then I started Trappers and Toots Restaurant. For those who remember Trappers, back where it became Santa Fe, and I can't remember what it is now. Party Foul, I think, is what it is now. And but that's kind of where they fell in love with Murfreesboro. So, but I started here, and I came back to Murfreesboro after I had a miserable experience the first 2 years in college, where I realized that girls and credit cards aren't a good combination, and so So as a result, I kind of came back to Murfreesboro, my tail stuck between my legs, and got to move back home for a bit, and then went to MTSU, graduated from MTSU. So from that, I've been around Murfreesboro a lot in that area. My kids grew up in Murfreesboro, and we've had that. But Murfreesboro itself has been great to my family. But there are obviously individuals, and wherever you go, there's always going to be individuals that aren't going to be nice and aren't going to be kind, and you got to deal with that no matter where you go.
Peter, when you look at, you asked me off air, what had I seen in the last 30 years in coaching and teaching kids and all of that. How different has the restaurant been in the last 30 years for you, and where do you see it going?
It's interesting because the restaurant industry you deal with, a lot of people don't understand it's sales, which is what you deal with the customers, and it's the direct line with customers, but it's also manufacturing, because you got to put the pieces together. You order the inventory to come in, to assemble together, to then serve to the customer. So you're dealing with both sides of it. The manufacturing side has a tremendous number of increase of regulations and that add to cost and add to other problems there. From the customer's perspective, social media has been, I think it's terrible. The Utah governor, I know, has been talking a lot about it in light of the Charlie Kirk assassination, but it's terrible what people say and do that they can hide behind a keyboard. Whereas before, that you could again, customers would tell you. I've literally have talked to customers and they're like, "Oh, everything is great." And then 5 minutes later, that same customer will post a negative review on social media when they had an opportunity for me to fix it right there on the spot. But I don't know if it's because they're afraid of conflict or what the situation is, but we see that. The other thing we see is we see the involvement of parents of grown children that will not let their children grow up, learn lessons. I mean, and we watch them fail miserably, and we watch their children fail miserably because their parents are trying to protect them too much instead of letting them learn from their own mistakes. And the restaurant business is great for that. It's a great first job experience for people. But yeah, the parents don't want that to happen, and we see much more involvement in that as well.
I always tell parents, they'll ask me, what's the best thing we can do for our kid? I said, the gift of independence, to not be dependent on you for every answer.
Yes.
Not for you to solve every problem. So again, you're in the restaurant business, you're a problem solver too.
Oh, always, yes. But what we see is, I mean, here's this is an extreme example, but it illustrates the point, I think, really well. Another restaurant years ago, we had a person bring in a gun into the restaurant. He was telling people who he was not going to kill, which was even more dangerous and more threatening on it than that. So, of course, the manager called me, and I'm like, get the gun away first, get it out of their bags that was there, call the police, obviously, do all that stuff. And so they did so, and the police came and they arrested him. Come to find out, he had about 3 or 4 days left on his parole before, so of course they revoked his parole. He ended up going back. The mother called me screaming and yelling at me because her son went to jail because of us. And I finally had to just tell her, no, the son went to jail because of you. Because you have had this attitude toward him. That's the reason why. He was already in this trouble. He was already in this problem. And the fact that you're defending somebody who is threatening to kill other people, and I recognize that's the son. That's why I absolutely, the assassin's parents, I really praise them to take that step of saying, we're going to turn our child in, because again, it's not easy. I can't imagine the pain they're going through. I can't imagine the pain they were going through when they discovered it. And my heart breaks for them, but they still did the right thing, and they did the right thing for so many other parents out there.
A great example for how how to be a good parent, I look at it, bad things happen to all of us.
Yes.
Christ tells us to pray for those that will harm us and want to hurt us. So again, it's not just that you got to hold them accountable, but you can still pray for them.
Oh, all the time. And then you also recognize too that when people are upset with you, more likely it deals with their own insecurities and not something with you. And I learned that, I mean, my wife and I, we were at 9-10 years of marriage, and we were seeing a marriage counselor. We were in a terrible place. And our marriage counselor told us we needed to get a divorce. I mean, that's how bad we were. And, but one of the things he taught us was, he said, that where we're getting upset with the other person has to do with our own insecurity. It has less to do with what the other person is doing to us, but rather that what the other person is building on an insecurity that we have. And in turn, I was creating the same problem for her. And the whole thing changed because my wife changed her prayers. I was not a Christian at the time, but she changed her prayers to say, instead of God change him, to God teach me how to love him. And then several months later is when I got saved. So our marriage started kind of recovering, and then I got saved after that. And then from there, we probably fight more now than what we did before, but our marriage is more secure now than it's ever been. So it's just part of it. Again, it's just communication and open and honesty with it.
A pastor of mine always talked about marriage, and you got to know how to fight. Because you're going to fight in a marriage.
You should fight in a marriage some way if you do it right. Yes.
If you're doing anything right, you're going to have fights. Since you became a Christian, has it changed how you fight?
Oh, 100%. Well, what was interesting is with my wife, I wouldn't fight at all. I would shut down. And so as a result, I was basically abandoning her. And so she would get more angry and pick more and nag more and yell more, trying to get an emotional response from me, which would cause me to shut down even more. So again, it was a cycle that we were that we were feeding off of each other, and just making it worse. But the second thing is with outside. My fighting was very physical. It was very verbal. It was very condescending, belittling. I have a unique gift at saying things that can really cut deep, and I have to be very careful with it. And when I mess up, when I lose my temper, when I get angry, now I go back and explain to them. It's like, okay, I recognize that was an emotional outburst. I will apologize for the emotional outburst, and then explain why I got that angry, and try to have the conversation with it from there. So yes, it's changed a whole lot on it. And I was watching a couple fight in the parking lot of the cookout here at a stoplight, and boy, she was letting him have it, and he was just sitting there just not doing anything. She rolls off and hits him, and I'm just kind of laughing, because I'm like, I see so many people think that that's going to get a response and a result, as opposed to saying, okay, what's the problem? Let's talk about the problem and find a solution to the problem, even if we don't agree with what it is. And but yeah, I mean, again, we're always going to mess up when we get emotional. That's why God tells us to guard our hearts
and minds. So yeah. Peter, when we look at this, what's your son's now starting, and you set it off there. You don't know if he's going to stick with it. He's 23 years old. He's trying to find his way, but you're in a third generation of family running a restaurant. What it's unheard of. Second generations usually fail. It's like 90%. You have not. So again, why? What's the...
I used to worry about legacy. I used to worry about it, and it was a driver, and it was bad. And then once I got saved, and I use that word intentionally, because I recognized that I was on a path and I needed to be saved, because I was not, but once I got saved, I realized it didn't matter at that point in time, because if God wants this business to close, I don't care how good I am, it's not going to stay open. And if God wants this business to stay open, he doesn't need me. I can die and the business can be highly successful after that, much more than what I've been able to do with it. And but I've had my share of failures. I've had a lot of failures. I've had some failures that turn into successes accidentally, and I've had that I had nothing to do with, and I've had things that should have been successful that failed. And I can look back and be like, I can try to explain it, but I really can't. So if I live my life to do what God's commanded us to do, which is to share the gospel and make disciples, then the rest doesn't matter. When it comes to my son, it's the same thing. That's what I'm trying to teach him. And he won't understand that as well. He's younger. He understands Christ. He understands all of that. But to understand that that's what I'm pouring into him, and that if the business fails under his watch or under my watch, that's okay. God has something better for us that we just don't know and see right now, but we should not be listening to the voices outside of, well, how's your parents going to feel about this? What's going to happen here? And I've had a lot of people, your mother's rolling over in her grave. I get a lot of comment cards where people tell me that, and it's kind of funny. I'm like, how bad was the fact you got a spoon that was dirty that would make you say something that hateful and personal? My kids have said, your grandmother would be disappointed in this. I mean, they've told them that. And what's funny is most of them did not know her at all. But there's this idea and so we have to get that out of our head that what we are doing is we are serving Christ today, and tomorrow, hopefully we get to serve Christ tomorrow. And once we can kind of get through that, the pressure of, the pressure of running the business seems to kind of dissipate.
I find it very funny that people all the time call me Coach, Peter, and I appreciate you call me Andy, because here's what I know. If you call me Coach, that's what I do. It's not who I am.
Right.
So I want a personal relationship because that's what Christ has called me into with him. And if I'm to be like Christ, then I've got to be in other relationships that they know each other and deeply. And so I find this conversation today of what you're doing with your son and your daughter and being so intentional is so important that the rest of us do with our children.
One of the things that went in my interview, one of my interviews on the podcast was with J. Warner Wallace, and we were having a conversation about your identity. And he used the analogy of, you've seen the wooden signs that have like the different signs attached to it, this many miles here, et cetera. And he says we look at our titles like, father, coach, brother, employer, whatever it is, and we move those signs up and down. He says in Christians, people look at Christians being there, we move it up and down as well. He said, but Christian is the post. It's and everything gets attached to that. If we recognize who we are as a child of God, because frankly, I'm a father and a husband. But if my wife and children died in a plane accident tomorrow, I would not be a father and husband anymore. God can take that away, but he can't take away who I am. In fact, when I die, all that goes away. I'm no longer a husband. I'm no longer a father. I'm no longer a boss, but I'm still a child of God. Even after death, my identity still survives. And when I help coach the high school girls in soccer, that's the big piece that I try to teach them, which is, you could be scared, but okay, you can lose. I teach goalies. I mean, we lose all the time as goalies. We get scored on all the time. It's just part of who it is. But that doesn't change who we are. We can fail and miss the shot that costs us the game, but it doesn't change who we are. And once we kind of get rooted in that, man, everything else just becomes easy.
Well, Peter, again, we're going to take a break and be right back with Peter Demas.
For 75 years, Murfreesboro Medical Clinic has been a cornerstone of health and compassion in our community. From our humble beginnings to the advanced, comprehensive care we offer today, our commitment to you has never wavered. With 8 locations across Murfreesboro and Middle Tennessee and over 100 physicians, we continue to provide the highest standard of care. Then, now, and always, your health is our mission.
Well, yeah, I'll be right there.
It takes all of us to power a community, both in plain sight and behind the scenes. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing...
Get ready for an unforgettable night and support First Shot. Autumn at the Alley is coming to Oakland's Mansion Tuesday, September 24th from 6 to 9 p.m. Sip on fine bourbon, wine, and spirits, enjoy premium cigars, and feast on incredible food from the Alley on Main, all while enjoying live music under the stars. Proceeds benefit First Shot's Academic All-Stars and Send the Kid to Camp programs. Find out more on their Facebook page and through Eventbrite, Autumn at the Alley, September 24th.
Forget those fluorescent lights and freezer burn. This ain't your average grocery run. Meet your farmer, talk a little livestock, and take home the juiciest veggies in your life. The Rutherford County Farmers Market, celebrating 50 seasons.
At Lane Agri Park in Murfreesboro.
Real food, real people, and real local.
Big savings are on the way, Murfreesboro. America's Thrift Stores is opening its newest location at 1030 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. You'll love the clean, well-organized shopping experience with thousands of new items added every single day. It really is a new store every day. Find up to 70% off name brand clothing, home goods, and more thanks to generous local donations. America's Thrift Stores, where it's a new store every day. For details, visit americasthrift.com/Murfreesboro.
This is Kim Dunaway from Sunshine Nutrition Center. You hear me on Monday mornings at 7:20 talking about how to lead a healthier lifestyle. We carry supplements, personal care, and grocery items at both our Murfreesboro and Smyrna locations, family owned and operated since 1989.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at wgnsradio.com.
Welcome back in to the Roundtable, WGNS. I'm Andy Herzer, founder and executive director of First Shot, and this is my shameless plug. Right now, you can go to First Shot TN, register for the 20th year of the Winter League. I can't believe I've been 2 decades doing this, but again, that's firstshottn.org. You can register. It's ages 5 to 14, boys and girls. And if you have any questions, you can give me a call at 615-631-5312. Peter, let's finish it up with 3 important keys for you to be successful in life, to teach others. Because that's what you're doing. You're in a business that you're teaching young people how to become successful in life.
Right. You know, that's a really good question on that, because and again, we've talked about it a lot today, which is the first one is you got to know who you are. Young people today see their identity and freedom in things of this world. Sadly, many of them see their identity and freedom rooted in sex, and that's that just leads to destruction. And but once you know again who you are, especially once you know who you are in Christ. That's number one. I think second thing is I think people have to understand that there is such a thing as truth, and there is a moral, objective truth, and then that it doesn't just kind of go off of my feelings and where things are. And I think once again you understand that, and you recognize there is something out there that is bigger, that's the standard of which you make your decisions. I think that's important. It's a foundational statement with it. And then the third thing is you got to work hard. I get so frustrated when I see these memes and these people talking about, on people's deathbed. No one said, "Oh, I wish I'd made that phone call late at night," or whatever. I'm like, there's so many different contexts involved in it. Working hard is a value. God gave us work. It was something he gave us to do before the fall. So it wasn't like
take care of the garden.
Yes, yeah, we're supposed to work, and for people that are striving more for quality of life, tells me that you're making the choice about work, and your decisions about work is wrong. But our attitudes about things impact us in such a way. There are times where I hate my job. I mean, there are times I absolutely hate it. There are times where I feel like a complete and utter failure. There are times where, I just throw in the towel on everything. But in reality is the choice I get to make with that decision. I can choose to give up, or I can choose to go through it. Again, you know this through coaching. There are times where your body says, I can't run another lap. I can't keep going. There's 30 seconds and I'm giving everything I have. The great people versus the not so great people make it through that last 30 seconds.
Well, I found your second one I want to kind of take up, because I think there's a lot of people that don't want to be coached. I think there's a lot of people that will be coached, but there's very few people that want to be told the truth.
Yeah, that's true.
And the ones that want to be told the truth, they find a different level of success to me.
Yeah, 100%. But there's another thing that we have to recognize is they have been taught and trained that there is no such thing as truth, which in and of itself is a true statement. So it makes zero sense when you actually apply it. So they try to couch it and live your truth as if truth is something that is yours or mine. Or they say, what's true for you is not true for me, as if that's not a true statement for everybody. So there's all sorts of kind of ridiculous notions when it comes to truth. But in reality is no, I don't want to hear the truth at times. I've seen where we've had a terrible shift, and I've had customers tell me we've had the terrible shift, and I have to sit there and take it, and I know we've had a terrible shift, and I have to sit there and be like, yeah, I don't want to hear it. No one wants to hear the truth, but what we choose to do with it, that's what makes us. That's the difference between, I think, success and failure. If I just kick it down the road and be like, oh, well, that's not true. They don't understand. They don't know anything. Well, then that's what, when you're 50 years old and you're like, why have I not been able to succeed in anything in life? It's because you chose not to listen throughout your life.
Peter, you and I both came to Christ later in our life, and I was a very angry
Me too.
man. I find myself now trying to be a better listener and say less. What's been your experience the last 10 years, I believe, is for you too?
Yeah, it's been almost 15 years now.
I can't believe it's been 20 years since we were in leadership Rutherford, but I'm not going there either.
The anger that was in me was rooted in something else. It was rooted in a lack of trust that I had in God. Because in reality is my anger had to do with, how can I phrase it? It was rooted in a fear. It was a fear of failing. It was a fear of, again, not living up to that legacy. It was a fear of people thinking I was stupid. It was a fear that, that I wasn't going to be important in life. It was all this fear. And in reality is the opposite of fear is not courage. And I kept trying to counter the fear with courage. And when that didn't work, anger would come out because it was enough to drive me. It was that angst that can get me going. It kept me sharp. It kept me moving. And in reality is the opposite of fear is trust. And so where is that trust? And my trust is in God. And once I realized that, one of the things I have to do, and I got to do it from time to time, and I encourage others to do it too, when you're afraid of something, let's say I'm afraid that I'm going to fail. I write it on a piece of paper, and then I scratch it out, and I say, God, I don't trust you with my success, and I write it above it. And then I say it out loud. Because I think in order to start repentance, you have to be honest with God. And I think that's where it is. And I think we have to do that from time to time. And it's terrible. No one wants to say it out loud. No one wants to tell God out loud that you don't trust him with something. But in reality is when you're afraid, that's what's going on. And if you don't manifest it that way, it comes out in anger.
And Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust the Lord with all your heart. It sounds so easy, Peter.
It sounds easy.
But in reality, it's the hardest thing I do. And I think it's the hardest thing that most people do is trust God with everything.
It is. I find myself all the time running down a path and like, God, where are you? Oh, you're on that path over there. Okay, I got to walk back, get back on the correct path and go there. I have a tendency to run ahead of where God wants me to be.
Well, again, I can't thank you enough. We're going to have to do this again because I don't even think we've got to everything I really wanted to ask you. But again, I appreciate you being on the show. I'm Andy Herzer. I thank you for listening.
Subscribe to Big G TV, local content that matters to Rutherford County.